back, everybody. Unit 7, the empty classroom. We're at the end of the unit, so we're going to do focus on writing today. If you can open your textbook with me, and let's go to page 203. There we go. Of course, the first thing we're going to do is reviewing our vocabulary. That's the vocabulary we've used and learned throughout this unit. Read the prompt and the form response posted by one of Professor Dunier's MOOC students. Complete a response using the words above each paragraph. So, we have 4 paragraphs in total, and above every paragraph there are like 4 keywords that you would have to use and place in the right place. So using the words in the correct context. You can pause your video to do this. Go ahead. That brings us to the point of expand. So we're expanding the vocabulary in a different way. And so we are going to complete the chart with the forms of the words from the reading. So part of speech, noun, verb, adjective, adverb. How do we use the words? Right? Okay. Note an X indicates there is no form in that category. For example, the first one, the noun adjustment or adjustability. The verb would sound or be adjust. The adjective will be adjusted, well adjusted, or adjustable, but there is no adverb. So if in any of these parts you don't have the form, then just put a cross. I'd like you to fill this chart out. Go ahead. That brings us to creating. Yeah, imagine you are a reporter interviewing the students and a professor from reading 1 and reading 2. How would they respond to the questions? Write answers using the words in the boxes. Change the word form or tense if necessary. So the word form, that means the part of speech, and the tense is the verb tense, which could be the past, the present, or the future, simple, continuous, or perfect. Here's an example. The reporter asked, how difficult was it for you to adjust to this new format of course delivery? And the MOOC student replied using all 4 words in the box. Now, you are going to do number 2, 3, 4, and 5. And remember, you have to use every word in the box in your response. So you need to create a sentence in which you can use 2 or 3 or 4 sentences even, so you can use all 4 words. You pause your video and do this. And please remember the word form and the tense. Pay notice to that. Go ahead. Great, that brings us to the grammar. We're going to talk about direct and indirect speech. Now, examine the pairs of sentences and answer the question. So here we have direct speech. One student said, it was a choice between online class versus no class. Professor Dunier told his students, sociological concepts may change from country to country. Professor Dunier commented, I am excited about teaching this course. I think it will be really interesting. What you can see here is that direct speech has quotation marks. So we could also call that a dialogue if it was a story. If it were a story, we would refer to it as dialogue. So it's something that someone directly says right now. It's stated now. As you can see, it uses quotation marks. Indirect speech, though, is like telling what has been said. A student said it had been a choice between online class versus no class. Professor Dunaire told his students that sociological concepts might change from country to country. And Professor Dunaire commented that he was excited about teaching that course. He thought it would be really interesting. Indirect speech is when you're stating it something that has been said already. So, number 1, what are the differences in punctuation between direct and indirect speech? 2, what are the differences are there between direct and indirect speech? And which words are different? How do they change? Please answer that first. Speech and writing can be reported in 2 ways, okay? So if it's direct, also called quoted speech, it reports the speaker's exact words. If it's indirect, we also call that reported speech. It reports what the speaker said without using the exact words. Now, for the punctuation, for direct speech, put quotation marks before and after the words being quoted. Use a comma to separate the words in quotation marks from the reporting verbs such as say, tell, and report. For indirect speech, there is no special punctuation. The verb tense changes though. For indirect speech, when the reporting verb is in the past tense, said, told, reported, the verbs inside the quotation marks change. Let's take a look at that. So for instance, direct speech, Margie said, comma, quotation mark, I do my homework at night, period, quotation mark. The indirect speech would be, Margie said she did her homework at night. So do or does changes to did. And that is because reported speech is something that has been said before. So when you report it, it's already past. So everything would then change to a past tense form. But we have different types of past tense. We have the simple past, we have past continuous, we have past perfect. So which one are we going to use? So when it's the simple present, it changes to the simple past. But when it's present progressive, which is present continuous, it changes to past progressive. So it always changes to a past form. So am is are doing becomes was were doing. When it's the simple past, it changes to the past perfect. Because it's already in the past. How can you do the past to the past? Then it becomes past perfect. So did will become had done. Now, if you're still confused about this, don't worry, because in your ebook for reading and writing, I gave you a grid of the verb changes for direct to indirect speech. So you can look that up in your ebook for reading and writing in general information. It's the first part of your ebook. But there is more. Past progressive. Let's say the direct speech is in the past progressive. It will change to the past perfect progressive. So present goes to past, but if the direct speech is in the past, it goes to the perfect tenses, okay? So the present perfect becomes past perfect, has, have done, had done. The model like will becomes a past model would, can, could, may, might. Yes, but that is also in your ebook, yeah? So remember the simple ones, simple of the present tense goes to the past. Yeah. So simple present becomes simple past, present continuous, past continuous, present perfect, past perfect. But then what about the past tenses? So if it's simple past, because past perfect. Yeah. So it becomes a perfect tense, a past perfect tense. Time and location word changes. We've got those two. So for indirect speech, time and location words may change to keep the speaker's original meaning. For instance, Tommy said, I don't have to study now. It will become, Tommy said he didn't have to study at that time. So now can become then or at that time, tomorrow, the next or following day, ago, before, earlier, here, there, this, that. Pronoun and possessive changes. For indirect speech, pronouns and possessives change to keep the speaker's original meaning. For instance, Professor Donaire said I. That becomes Professor Donaire said he. Professor Donaire said my students. Professor Donaire said his students. Okay, if you still have questions about this, please write them down. So in class, when we meet each other, we can talk about this. And remember, check out your ebook because there is an explanation there too. And it's important for this that you just remember the formula of the verb change. The verb tense change. Read the first sentence in each item. It is indirect speech, and then circle the speaker's exact words. For example, the MOOC student said that he learned more in Professor Donaire's MOOC than he did in traditional class. Which one is the quoted or direct version of the sentence? Answer numbers 1 until 7. Go ahead. Write the direct speech statement in indirect speech. Remember to keep the speaker's original meaning. Don't change the meaning. Okay, we've got an example. Tommy said, my father knows as much as my teacher. Tommy said that his father knew as much as his teacher. Now, remember that you gotta have the verb tense correct. So look at the direct speech first. And you gotta think first, okay, in what tense is this sentence? Tommy said, my father knows as much as my teacher. Present tense, simple present. So simple present changes to simple past. See, that's why you need to know the formula. You got to remember what it changes into. Otherwise, you can't do this. Yeah. So Tommy said that his father knew as much as his teacher. Now, another thing I want to remind you of is that verb tense in a sentence is always determined by the first verb in the sentence. The first verb. So my father knows. Knows is the first verb. Yeah, that his father knew. Okay, so always look at the first verb in a sentence. Awesome beans. You're going to answer 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Go ahead. And that brings us to your final writing task, which is your writing project, which you write in your journal. A comparison and contrast essay describing 2 different educational experiences you have participated in. I'm super excited to read that. Okay, to prepare to write for your brainstorm, you can do charting. Yeah, so that means that you can make a chart. It's a pre-writing activity that helps you organize information before you write. It is especially useful when you are comparing and contrasting because you can easily make sure that you included similar information for both things that you're going to write about. Yeah, let's take a look. You can use also another way, but the chart would work well. Look at the chart. The writer has described her experience taking a course in a traditional school and taking an MOOC course. So here you see the 2 categories and then the points of comparison and contrast. Those are placed on the vertical axis. Yeah, the vertical column, let's say like that. And then the horizontal column gives the topics. The subjects, yeah. So you could make this for your brainstorm. Now, remember that when you have brainstormed, use that information to do your research. Now, researching means you're going to read. You're going to read. You're going to look for information, read through that information and see if that can be used as evidence for the point you've made. Also, when you do that, you will find more points that you want to add to your brainstorm because you probably only came up with some ideas that came from your own mind, from your own ideas. So by researching and reading, you also can come up with more constructive points that you want to use in your writing. Remember to straight away write down the link and who wrote it. It's smart to do that on a separate document. So copy the link and everything. So once you make your bibliography, it's easy for you to put it in. You just need to copy paste it. For your bibliography, remember to use the MLA system. Means that you do it in alphabetical order based on the surname. We always start with the surname, the family name, not the first name. So do it in bibliographical order. Alphabetical order, I mean. Oh boy. So do the bibliography in alphabetical order. That's what I try to say. And another thing that's important is that you add the date that the link or the article or journal was uploaded. And also add the date when you accessed it. So 2 dates. One, that the article or the journal was uploaded or published. And one date when you retrieved it, you accessed it. Yeah? So just look at the files to remember how to do that. So writing a comparison and contrast essay explains the similarities and differences between two topics, the ideas, people, or things. It's important to have a clear introduction. Remember hot, hook, overview, and topic sentence. Your thesis statement, I mean. And then for your body, make sure you have topic sentence, main point, explanation, main point, explanation, main point, explanation, concluding sentence for each body. And then your concluding paragraph, the summary and conclusion, the review, and the takeaway. Yes. There are 2 common ways to organize a comparison and contrast essay. With point-by-point organization, you write about the similarities and differences of different aspects of each of the 2 topics. So if you use a point-by-point, you'd probably, in the first body paragraph, in your topic sentence, you will mention and introduce the first topic, subtopic, and then in the body paragraph, your first main point would be the similarities, and then the second main point would be the differences. Yeah. If you're doing a block organization, it's different. The first body paragraph, in the topic sentence, you will introduce that you're going to write about the similarities. And then in the second body paragraph, in the topic sentence, you will introduce that you are going to talk about the differences. So with block organization, we block and we create paragraphs based on the purpose. And the purpose in this case is similarities and differences, comparison and contrast. But with point by point, we are creating the paragraphs based on the subtopics. Okay? So for example, point by point organization. The first body paragraph, where and when the class takes place. And the second body paragraph, student-teacher communication. The third body paragraph, class size and makeup. And in those paragraphs, you will mention the similarities and differences. With block organization, for example, you do MOOC and then you write about everything. In a traditional school class, you write about everything. It could also be in block that in the first body, you just only write about the similarities, yeah? And in the second body paragraph, you only write about the differences. You block it based on the purpose. With the point by point, you block it based on the subtopic. Okay, read the essay excerpts. How are they organized and how do you know? And circle point by point. Circle point by point or black. Yeah. Or block. Sorry. So I want you to check paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. You have to tell me how they're organized and how you know. And then you here circle whether it's point by point or block. Go ahead. Comparisons and contrasts. So comparisons shows the similarities, whereas contrast shows the differences, right? It's important that you use subordinators and transitions. So when you go from the first body paragraph to the second body paragraph, use a transition word or linker. To the third, use a transition word or linker. And to the concluding paragraph, use a transition word or linker to make sure that everything is well connected. Yeah? And then also within every body paragraph, you can use the linkers also between main point 1 to main point 2, just to make it a fluent writing. Examine the paragraph and answer the questions with a partner. Well, you're going to answer it by yourself and we'll discuss it together when we meet each other. Certain words act as signals to introduce points of comparison and contrast. We've got while, in contrast, whereas, in the same way. Number 1 and number 2, please answer those questions. Go ahead. So, comparisons point out ideas that are similar, whereas contrasts show what is different. Subordinators are used to compare and contrast the ideas into clauses. So they join the independent clause to the dependent clause, being compared and contrasted. Now, I gave you a good grid of syntax in your ebook for reading and writing in general information, which is the first part of your ebook. You can go there and you will find the grid of syntax, which is sentence structure, and you will see the explanation of every different sentence: simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, compound complex sentence, and you will find the formulas. So if you've forgotten it, no worries, go back to your ebook and read it and remember. Examples of subordinators include while, whereas, just as. These will then start the sentence and indicate that that sentence is a dependent clause. And we know that a dependent clause cannot stand on its own. It needs the help of an independent clause. These words introduce dependent clauses, not complete thoughts. So the independent clause usually describes the point that is being emphasized or is more important. Just as, whereas, while. Comparison, contrast. Transitions show the connection between two independent clauses. For instance, similarly, in the same way, likewise, or contrasting. In contrast, on the other hand, however, these are very good to start your sentence. You can even use them to start your paragraph. It's good to connect. Two independent clauses can be combined in one sentence by using a semicolon and a comma. You can do that. For instance, I love my biology class, semicolon, however, comma. I don't like all the memorization it requires. It's one way to do it. You can also use it as separate sentences. Our grade in algebra is based entirely on 3 tests and a final exam. However, comma, our biology grade is based on tests, a final exam, lab reports, and a research paper. 2 different sentences. However, you can also combine it as a simple sentence using the phrase in the same way. The biology teacher expects a lot of hard work from her students in the same way the algebra teacher does. And if you use it this way, you don't have to use a comma. Remember that whenever you start the sentence with a dependent clause, you have to use a comma in the middle. If you start your sentence with an independent clause, we do not use a comma. Please go to your ebook and reread your syntax. Combine the pairs of sentences to make comparisons and contrasts. So in this case, you use the word likewise. MOOC students are taught and submit papers via the internet. Likewise, semicolon, likewise, comma. Tommy and Margie also are taught via the computer, via or via, however. Tomato, right? Okay, I'm going to ask you to combine the pairs of sentences, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Use the bold word or phrase. Go ahead. Great. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do is read the paragraphs, decide whether the writer is comparing and where he or she is contrasting. So where is it comparing, where is it contrasting? Add transitions or subordinators of comparison or contrast to each paragraph to make the writer's meaning clear. Okay, then we will discuss when we meet each other in class which type of organization requires more transitions and subordinators. We've got paragraph 1, 2, 3, and those you're gonna do right now. So good. Let's look at our final draft checklist. 1. Does the essay have an introduction which includes relevant background information about the two educational experiences? 2. Does the essay have a thesis statement that indicates how these experiences are similar and different? 3. Does your essay clearly follow a point-by-point or a block organization? 4. Does the essay use effective subordinators and transitions to show comparison and contrast? 5. Does the essay include specific details and examples to illustrate the similarities and differences? 6. Does the essay have a conclusion summarizing the main ideas of the essay? 7. Does the essay use reported speech? And 8. Have you used the vocabulary from the unit? So good. That brings us to the end of our unit. Very good. We reviewed the vocabulary in review, expand, and create. We created sentences. Then we went over our grammar, which is direct and indirect speech, and practiced that. And while looking at our writing project, we looked at brainstorming, brainstorming in the way of using a chart. We looked at the comparison and contrast essay, point-by-point organization versus block organization in an essay, and comparisons and contrast keywords, signal words, and transitions within our writing and between paragraphs. And we looked at our checklist. That's it. So good. Okay, thank you very much. You're amazing, and I'm really happy you watched the video, and I appreciate your hard work. I'll see you very soon. God bless you. Bye.